My name is Erin Paul. I'm the moderator for this ADEIL conference session. Before we begin, on behalf of ADEIL, we'd like to thank our host, Troy University, and our technical coordinator, Marcy Shirley, from Troy University. We're thankful for their contributions in making this event possible. And thank you very much for joining us for this presentation, From Course Start to Finish, Strategies for Supporting Counseling Students' Learning Experience in the Online Classroom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephanie Howard and Dr. Joshua Southwick.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to be here today. I'm Dr. Joshua Southwick at Troy University. My background is in rehabilitation counseling, and we have a program, a counseling program here at Troy where we teach clinical mental health counseling, rehabilitation counseling, and as well as school counseling. So we'll be diving into that today, and I'll let Dr. Stephanie Howard introduce herself.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Dr. Southwick said, I'm here at the main campus of Troy University, and my background is in school counseling. So I'm a school counseling educator here, and we are excited to talk about how this particular session can apply to various specialties throughout universities.
Great. So yeah, from course start to finish, strategies for supporting counseling students' learning experience in the online classroom, a topic that's becoming more prominent in our time at Troy as we put more of our courses online. Eventually, all of them is what we plan. So, okay, we'll just jump right in here. A quick review of our session. If you didn't read it in the program, we're going to share best practice strategies for designing and delivering an online course with a focus on the user experience or UX of students. We'll really emphasize those 2 points throughout, kind of how we design ahead of time and then how we deliver kind of in the moment, right? That ongoing implementation of our course. We're going to share strategies that impact counseling students in particular in asynchronous online courses. And so we'll be pulling in some counseling concepts that also apply to the classroom. We'll address course design and delivery elements, really working around the Quality Matters framework, if you're familiar with the QM rubric. And we'll also provide some examples and descriptions of the benefits of applying these strategies for online counseling students.
So our objectives today is that participants will be able to define the principle of user experience, as well as how it applies to the online classroom. You'll be able to understand strategies for designing and delivering an online course in ways that promote a better student experience. And then finally, recognize how to implement specific course elements that can contribute to the overall quality of the course.
Great. So just again, a brief outline. We want to talk about supporting students, and we're going to first define that what user experience is, UX in the classroom. We'll talk a little bit about empathy-centered design, and then we'll get into those specific strategies from start to finish using the QM standard areas. All right, so user experience. This is kind of a concept that I came across, and it really helped me frame some of the ideas I had of, wow, how can we think about the student experience and what they're going through as they come into an online class, maybe an online asynchronous class, where they don't join us in the classroom, and we want to know what's going on with them. So user experience is defined as people's needs, perceptions, and behaviors related to their interactions with products, services, or systems. So really, to put that into the classroom, we're looking at a student, what they and the ways that they interact with our course. Okay, so it's how they interact with the LMS, whether it's Canvas or Blackboard or what have you. The way they interact with us as an instructor, the way they interact with other students, and the course materials as a whole. Okay, so what is their overall experience? It's kind of that holistic experience of the user. So when we talk about user experience design, I really like this quote from Hartson and Pila that kind of brings it together for me. It says, in a design-centric view, we envision an ideal experience and then try to push the technology limits to make it happen and realize the vision. So traditionally, we've looked at user design and user experience kind of out of the human computer interaction field, okay, where we go, oh, how is someone interacting just with a piece of technology? But we're applying that in more recent years to the classroom, and what is it like for a student as a student user to experience our course. Okay. All right, and I'll pass it back to you, Stephanie.
All right. So a few principles of the user experience. First, depending upon your focus, various user experience principles can be applied. And we're going to focus on these three for the purposes of this presentation. First is usefulness. How does this experience provide a way to a meaningful end goal? How functional is it? Does it provide the kind of utility that you want within the course? And then secondly, usability. Of course, you want it to be effective, you want it to be efficient, and certainly for students, you want it to be engaging, easy to learn, as well as easy to use, because these are the things that will help students to really continue and move forward within an online class, and it will certainly determine their level of engagement. And then finally, satisfaction. Is it a pleasurable experience? Does the platform and the activities within make them more curious to move forward throughout the course? And then in the end, will they consider it a delightful experience? Because certainly we want the overall experience to be desirable, accessible, but certainly valuable in the end.
Great. And so again, we're thinking about our counseling students, and again, I would say apply this widely and broadly, but in the counseling field, we talk a lot about empathy, right? Understanding someone else and taking their point of view and understanding their subjective experience. It's really vital in a counseling context to have empathy, okay? There's a lot of research out there that shows that, clients withdraw early or they terminate the counseling process based on a poor experience or a poor quality relationship. So empathy is one of the keys to building that strong working alliance, that working relationship between counselor and client. So we definitely acknowledge and know of the value of empathy in counseling. In recent years, again, this has been drawn into the classroom, and I found this term. It was empathy-centered design, and I went, oh wow, they actually, there's people that are working on this and thinking about how can we design with an empathy frame of mind. And so the same way, students in our classes can disengage or withdraw altogether, right? I think most often it's kind of disengaging, falling out and kind of checking out. But when we talk about empathy-centered design, it's looking at how the course, again, is structured, how we design it, and how we implement it in a way that relates to the student. And there's a little concept here that I found relating to the student versus knowing about the student. And I think we know a lot about our students, and we gather information about them. In empathy-centered design, we go one step further and we begin to relate to the students and think about their experience a little more deeply, right? And again, pulling that empathy card and saying, okay, if I were a student, what would I need? And then acting on that, right? And taking the action. And we can't do everything for everyone, and we can't just push people through or make it happen, but we can think about what is this like for a student who maybe is new to the online environment or coming back to college or what have you. And the empathy-centered design can, again, provide a way to have better student experience. And we're going to get into some of those strategies here shortly. Okay, I'll just put this up briefly, but there is some evidence. We do want to show that there is some evidence that user-centered design and applying UX principles in online courses really does, at least some of the evidence shows, it can enhance learning, it can increase satisfaction of the students, it improves usability, it may be critical to learning and engagement. So yeah, we do see some research evidence for this concept. All right. Back to you, guiding questions, Dr. Howard.
All right. So some of the guiding questions that we want to consider when we are designing our courses, that how can UX principles be applied in the online classroom during design and delivery in order to improve the learning and the overall student experience? And then also, what key touch points impact the student user experience? And when we talk about touch points, we're talking about the interactions within the course, between the instructor, as well as the classmates of the course, because we certainly want there to be gain points and not pain points during this online classroom experience. And we'll talk a little bit more about gain points versus pain points in a few minutes. Okay, so when we're talking about the student user experience from start to finish, we are talking, for the purposes of this presentation, about 5 of the 8 quality measure select standards from the quality measure rubric for higher education. So the first one is course overview and introduction. Then we have the learning objectives and competencies, learning materials, learning activities and learning interaction, and then finally assessment and measurement. So throughout the presentation, there's going to be symbols on the slides that correspond to each one of these standards from the QM rubric. So look for those as we go through the presentation.
Yeah, great. And if you're not familiar with the QM rubric, just go to the Quality Matters website. You can find a brief listing of these general standard areas, as well as the specific review standards that fall within each of these. And yeah, as we talk about some of these strategies, some apply just to one of these areas and some apply to multiple, and we'll show you that as we go here. All right, so as this is kind of our start to finish then, as I thought about it, the syllabus came, to mind as one of those first things, right, that impacts our student experience. And so this falls under the introduction and course overview area, as you see by the symbol in the upper right. But when we look at the syllabus, there's a few questions. My big question is, does the syllabus primarily meet the need of the students, or is the syllabus really more just checking the boxes of university and department requirements? Okay, and sometimes that's tricky because we do have to meet the requirements, but we want to think about, is there a way to create our syllabus that is more geared to the needs of the student? Because students are more concerned with, what am I going to be doing day in and day out, and how can I be successful in the course, right? How many points for each of the assignments and so forth. So there are, as you see on the slide, there are checklists. There's even a whole book about how to create your syllabus. So we could spend a lot of time on this, but think about the clarity of your expectations in the syllabus. How can you meet student needs while also checking the box for what's required from your university or department? And then my last question is the tone warm or cold? So sometimes we put in language of, students are expected to do this, or students must, or there's no excuse for missing assignments, right? And instead we can kind of warm that tone up by saying, I hope you will do this, or I encourage students to do such and such. And I saw one from James Herbert from Penn State. He said, what to do if your little brother hit the delete key on the assignment and it's gone, right? It's just kind of being a little more playful or warm in the way we describe things. Okay, the next piece here, you've got your syllabus done. Hopefully you can see how warm it is. But what I call day one, what's the student experience of day one in the online class, especially in asynchronous class? What is day one, right? When does that person log in? Are they going to get some sort of email or announcement that welcomes them? What's the front page of your Canvas course looking like? I put a little clip here of, I put up my picture up. I put a little short video. It's really quite informal, but I do that on purpose just to show that I'm a kind of a regular person. So yeah, I've got a 41-second video clip here that just introduces me, and they hear my voice and they see that I'm just kind of a regular person, right? Hopefully, because we want to connect with students. That's the whole point here. If you think about the traditional classroom, people are coming in, we maybe do introductions, we get to know each other, hopefully on some level. We want to personalize this. We want to be welcoming and keep that human element in. So again, I relate this back to counseling a little bit of, we've got to keep that human element in. So the encouragement is to be intentional about how you welcome students into an asynchronous course. Let's see, I guess I'm doing this one too. So introductions, I've talked about this a little bit, getting to know each other. One additional concept I will mention briefly here is the empathy map. And again, this comes out of our user experience concepts, empathy mapping and journey mapping. If you've heard of these concepts, we really are trying to understand, again, the student perspective. So for example, as they come into the classroom, what's that student's environment? In particular for the course, but also we want to know, a little bit about them and what they're seeing and hearing. But in the course, what do they see and hear? What are their beliefs and behaviors as they come into the course and as they walk through the course? Okay, what are they thinking and feeling and doing? And then we mentioned earlier those pain points and gain points as they go through the course. And if you think about modules of an asynchronous online course, are there pain points like, oh, this was so confusing, I got so lost, right? Is the student really struggling? And we want to try to get that feedback from students. So part of it is thinking about how to connect with students. Do we ask for the students to give us feedback on a discussion board? Do we send a weekly survey or something, right? We don't want it to be onerous, but somehow we've got to get that feedback of, what are you experiencing in my course? Tell me what the pain points are. I want to know what's difficult. Tell me what works really well for you, okay? So some of that formal assessment can be really valuable in understanding and relating to our students. All right, we'll move on to some other concepts here. Constructive alignments.
All right, so when we're talking about constructive alignments, we are talking about, this is also called the magic triangle by some, but the learning activities become meaningful, which is a UX principle, to students and instructors because they help students achieve the learning objectives and prepare for the course assessments. So of course, we want the learning outcomes to be determined prior to the development of the course and prior to considering what learner activities are going to be assigned. And then the assessments, of course, should be in consideration of what you've asked students to do, those learning activities, as well as what those beginning learner outcomes are. So if we do this, then there'll be that constructive alignment for the course.
Great. Yeah, and so I put up a quick example here. I won't spend time on it, but this is from one of my courses where we look at the objective for the student, does the activity that we're asking them to do match, and does the assignment or assessment match that as well? And this, you know, we talk about from start to finish, this really is before the starting line to align these things. All right. We'll move quickly here in interest of time. Instructional materials. So this is another area from the QM rubric, and the key here in my mind is to have multiple means of representation. This is also out of Universal Design for Learning. If you're familiar with UDL, basically it says don't just have one way of doing it, right? Don't give students a single narrow pathway. Give them multiple pathways for learning the material, whether it's readings, videos and podcasts, websites. I even say student contributions. I've had some great courses where I actually assign students on a weekly basis. It's your turn to bring something that helps us learn this. And so they'll bring a website or a resource or a video or a Quizlet, and it's great to see what they bring. It always enriches the class.
Right. So when you are considering your instructional materials, you want to at least make sure that the language is gender neutral so that your materials speak to everyone. And that also goes along with using any case studies or examples that you have, having diverse populations represented within those things that you put in an online course. Again, you want your course to be a place where everyone sees themselves within the classroom. And then finally, you want to create study guides or helpful tips that might help students to understand complex concepts. So for example, if there's something within the syllabus or the activity that needs further development, then we have to be flexible and insert those materials. For example, in a class I had, they were writing a research paper about group counseling, and they had to look at these group development theories and develop this paper, but that particular course didn't really talk about group development. So I had to insert a PowerPoint that really showed students, what are some of the group development theories that were out there, so they would have a starting point. Because sometimes there's an assumption that people have information when they come into a course, but we want to dispel any of that and have all the information that they need that would help them to understand the concept and therefore have a better opportunity to do well on the assignment.
Great. Again, there's a lot of connection among these different concepts. The materials that we use leads us to, in some way, to the activities and the interaction among learners. Let me share just a couple of principles again that come from user experience and user-centered design. One is to seek feedback early and often. Again, we want to stay connected with our students. And I think I spoke to this a little bit earlier, so I won't belabor it, but really trying to understand what's going well for them and what is not. Let's see. And then fostering a culture of sharing and collaboration. It's interesting. I was watching a NASA movie recently, and they talked about these astronauts going out, and they said, that team of people that you're with, it's really the only people you have. in some scenarios. You have to be able to work together with that team. And I don't want us to be disconnected, disconnect our classroom from everything else. But in a sense, we're just the small group of us working together within a classroom. And if we don't use each other and share and collaborate, we're really missing opportunities. And we've got to bring everyone along. It's kind of the idea too. So consider how you can do that in your learning activities and learner interaction.
I don't want to, sorry for interrupting. I just want to
Nope.
note that we have about 4 minutes.
Okay, we will
All right.
wrap it up
Up
here.
to you all, however you want to use it.
Okay, so finally, when we're talking about learner activities, there's certainly a wealth of digital options, in particular digital platforms such as MindTap by Cengage. I know Pearson has a digital platform, and in these platforms, learning activities are already pre-populated. Instructors can go in and determine which ones best support the objectives for the assignments. And in those digital platforms, there's opportunities for peer review and peer engagement. For example, when we're talking about that interaction, learner interaction, students actually have the opportunity to look at each other's assignments if it's required, to help them review, collaborate. And then also in digital platforms, there's opportunities for instructor grading. There's AI support in terms of helping with giving feedback automatically to students. And then there's also opportunities for student-led discussion prompts within those platforms. All right, so when we're talking about digital platforms, this is also a place where assessment and measurement can take place. Again, there's peer assessment. They can gain valuable insights from their peers. They can also develop critical thinking and metacognitive skills. And we know when we're talking about metacognitive skills, we're talking about really thinking about thinking. What are some strategies that help people to think about their own thinking process? And some of those skills that might be learned, planning, monitoring, evaluating, all of those things are valuable in peer assessment. And then also with self-assessment, it allows the learners to foster ownership and responsibility of their learning, and then also just to actively participate in the learning process. So certainly technology and digital platforms can add a lot to an online classroom.
Great, I see we're at the end here. We just encourage you to consider your student user experience. We hope it's not looking like this. And we hope that as you walk through your course, that it looks more like this. This happy, delightful child, right? Who's in awe. It's a high standard, but we can shoot high and hope that students have a better experience. I know we're down to the last minute here. If you do have questions or comments, please do feel free to reach out to us through email, and thank you for attending.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Howard, Dr. Southwick, for your presentation, and to all of you who have attended. I'm going to put in the chat the conference evaluation, so please feel free to give us that information at the end of the day, and enjoy the rest of the ADEIL conference. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very well done.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.